The crystalline spires of the Vraxian survey ship Eternal Observation caught Earth's sunlight like a constellation of diamonds suspended in the void. Within the ship's observation dome, Chief Curator Vixnan allowed all four of his inner eyes to open fully, drinking in the sight of the blue-white planet below. His outer eyes remained fixed on the stream of data flowing across multiple holographic displays. "Fascinating," he whispered, his vocal sacs vibrating with genuine wonder. "Simply fascinating." The planet before them defied conventional classification. Most garden worlds in the Empire's vast database fell into neat categories: desert worlds, ocean worlds, jungle worlds. But this was something else entirely. Chief Curator, his assistant, Kitvan, approached with characteristic caution. "The preliminary analysis is complete. You may wish to review it personally." Vixnan extended a slender appendage, accepting the data crystal. As he interfaced with it, his inner eyes widened further. The planet's surface temperature ranged from lethal cold to impossible heat, often in the same region within a single orbital cycle. Atmospheric pressure variations would crush most sentient species, while storms regularly unleashed enough energy to power a small colony ship. "And you say there's intelligent life here?" he asked, even as he reviewed the confirming data himself. "Yes, Chief Curator. They call themselves humans. They've achieved basic spaceflight and global communications, despite their environment." Kitvan's vocal sacs trembled slightly. "Perhaps we should mark this as a prohibited zone. The environmental hazards alone." "No." Vixnan's response came sharp and quick. "Show me their biological data." The holographic displays shifted, revealing detailed scans of human physiology. The more Vixnan studied them, the more his excitement grew. These humans had evolved remarkable adaptations: internal temperature regulation, robust skeletal structures, efficient repair mechanisms, and unprecedented environmental tolerance ranges. "Do you understand what we're seeing, Kitvan?" Vixnan gestured at the displays with two appendages, while his others danced across control surfaces. These creatures survived and developed intelligence on a world that should have killed them 1,000 times over. Their very existence defies biological probability. Kitvan shifted uncomfortably. All the more reason to avoid contact, surely. Such unpredictable life forms will make the perfect addition to the grand exhibition. Vixnan interrupted. "Think. Every standard world in the galaxy is already represented in our preserves. But this is unique. A species that thrived on a death world, that built civilization in conditions that would sterilize most planets." The displays shifted again, showing human cities sprawled across impossible landscapes. They built in deserts, in frozen wastes, in flood zones and earthquake regions. They survived volcanic eruptions and rebuilt. They endured storms that could shred reinforced hull plating and simply called it weather. "Begin habitat construction immediately," Vixnan commanded. "I want our finest designers working on this. Create an environment that eliminates all these hazards, all these challenges. Show the galaxy how the Empire can take even the most extreme species and provide them with perfection." "The containment requirements," Kitvan began, "will be extraordinary, yes." Vixnan's vocal sacs pulsed with satisfaction. "Triple the standard security protocols. Design the habitat with redundant systems for every possible contingency. These humans have survived by adapting to chaos. We will give them order. They have endured by struggling against their environment. We will give them harmony." He turned all 6 eyes back to the planet below. Somewhere down there, his future exhibits were going about their primitive lives, unaware that salvation approached. The Empire would lift them out of their harsh existence and place them in a carefully crafted paradise, and the galaxy would marvel at both the humans' resilience and the Empire's benevolence. "Prepare the collection protocols," he ordered. "I want 10,000 specimens, carefully selected to preserve their cultural and genetic diversity. We're not just building another exhibit, Kitvan. We're creating history. As his assistant hurried away, Vixnen allowed himself a moment of pure satisfaction. In all his centuries as chief curator, he had never encountered such a perfect opportunity. These humans would be his masterpiece, living proof of the Empire's ability to tame even the most extreme forms of life. He had no way of knowing he had just initiated the greatest miscalculation in Imperial history. Dr. Maya Patel stood at her bedroom window, coffee cup frozen halfway to her lips as she watched the stars fall. Except they weren't stars. They were moving with purpose, geometric patterns emerging as they descended through the pre-dawn sky. Her phone buzzed incessantly on the nightstand, but she couldn't look away from the crystalline shapes that were gradually resolving themselves into massive vessels. "My God," she whispered, years of astrophysics research crystallizing into a single moment of realization. They're really here. The first reports hit the news networks moments later. Similar ships appeared over every major city across the globe. Global communications began to falter, military responses were neutralized with disturbing ease, and strange energy fields enveloped strategic locations worldwide. In her laboratory at MIT, Maya frantically archived data as readings poured in from every operational sensor. The ship's energy signatures were unlike anything in recorded science. They bent light, warped local spacetime, and generated fields that seemed to selectively interact with specific technologies. Dr. Patel, her graduate student, Tom, burst into the lab. "They're taking people. It's not an invasion. They're collecting." The air shimmered, and Maya felt a strange tingling sensation. The last thing she saw was Tom's startled expression as the laboratory dissolved around her. She awoke on soft grass under an artificial sun. The environment around her looked like a surreal painting of Earth. Everything was just slightly wrong. The grass too uniform, the trees too perfectly spaced, the temperature exactly 22 degrees Celsius with no variation. As she sat up, she saw others awakening in similar confusion. There were people from every continent, wearing everything from business suits to farming clothes to laboratory coats. "Welcome, specimens," a melodious voice echoed from nowhere and everywhere. "You have been chosen for the grand exhibition of the Vraxian Empire. Your new habitat has been optimized for your comfort and safety." Maya stood, her scientific mind already cataloging the inconsistencies in their environment. The air had no smell. The light came from no distinct source. The grass bent under her feet, but made no sound. "Your primitive world subjected you to countless hazards," the voice continued. "Here, you will experience perfection. No storms, no temperature extremes, no dangerous organisms. You will be provided with all necessities and observed for the edification of galactic society." A murmur ran through the growing crowd. Maya noticed how the people naturally began clustering into groups. Medical professionals comparing notes, engineers studying the visible infrastructure, farmers examining the soil with skeptical expressions. "Look there," someone said, pointing to a barely visible shimmer in the air about a kilometer away. Maya squinted and saw what appeared to be an observation post, staffed by tall, multi-limbed figures. "Preliminary medical examination of all specimens will commence shortly," the voice announced. "Please maintain calm. Any aggressive behavior will result in temporary sedation." Maya watched as people exchanged glances, subtle nods, and unspoken understanding passing between total strangers. She saw military personnel deliberately relaxing their stances, scientists carefully pocketing small samples of their surroundings, and teachers already gathering children to keep them calm. "They think they're helping us," she heard a botanist mutter. "They've removed every challenge they could identify." "But not the ones they couldn't understand," Maya replied quietly, her mind racing as she analyzed their situation. The Vraxians had created what they thought was a perfect environment, but their definition of perfection revealed their own limitations. The artificial sun never wavered. The temperature remained constant. Even the air pressure was perfectly stable. For a species that had evolved on Earth, this wasn't paradise. It was a telegraph of their captors' vulnerabilities. As Maya watched her fellow humans begin to systematically explore their new prison, she realized the Vraxians had made a crucial mistake. They hadn't collected random specimens. They'd selected the most adaptable, innovative, and resilient members of a species that had conquered every environment Earth had thrown at them. They thought they were creating an exhibit. Instead, they'd assembled the perfect team for understanding, undermining, and ultimately escaping their captivity. The Vraxians had built their perfect cage. Now all humanity had to do was learn to pick the lock. Junior observer Rilven adjusted her monitoring equipment for the third time that cycle, certain she must be getting erroneous readings. The human settlement patterns made no sense according to any known sociological models. Second observer Linta. She called to her superior. I believe there may be an error in the habitat's spatial mapping system. Linta glided over, his sensory appendages twitching with irritation. Explain. The humans are arranging their living spaces in apparently random configurations, but she gestured at her displays. The randomness itself shows patterns. Look at these agricultural zones. They're not aligned with the optimal growing grids we provided. The larger Vraxian studied the holographic projection. The humans had indeed ignored the carefully planned agricultural spaces, instead creating gardens that seemed to sprawl chaotically across their designated living areas. Yet as he watched, he noticed how these irregular patterns somehow produced greater yields than their calculations had predicted. Most peculiar, he admitted. Forward your observations to analysis. In the primary observation chamber, Chief Curator Vixnan reviewed the growing collection of anomalies with increasing fascination. The humans weren't just surviving in their new environment. They were actively reshaping it, using tools and materials in ways that defied imperial categorization. Show me the education centers, he commanded. The displays shifted to show groups of humans gathered in various locations. Knowledge transfer was occurring, but not in the rigid, hierarchical structure the Vraxians had anticipated. Instead, skills and information flowed in all directions. A young human might teach an elder about technology, while simultaneously learning ancient survival techniques. They're adapting far more quickly than projected, Kit Van noted, concern evident in his vocal sacs. Perhaps we should adjust the environmental controls. No, Vixnan decided. Let them adapt. This is precisely why they're such fascinating specimens. Observe how they've modified their provided tools. The simple maintenance implements they'd been given had been reconfigured in subtle ways. Farming tools gained secondary uses. Building materials were combined in novel configurations. Even their recreational activities seemed to serve multiple purposes, combining physical training with social bonding and skill development. In one corner of the habitat, Dr. Maya Patel led what appeared to be a simple exercise group. The observers noted how the humans moved in patterns, practicing movements that seemed inefficient yet somehow strengthened their already remarkable endurance. Their social structure continues to evolve, another observer reported. They're forming specialized groups, but with significant overlap and interaction. Vixnan watched as humans with different skills worked together, sharing knowledge and resources. Engineers consulted with botanists. Medical professionals collaborated with physical laborers. Every interaction seemed to build upon their collective capabilities. Fascinating, he mused. On their death world, this ability to cooperate must have been essential for survival. Now they maintain it even in perfect conditions. But not all the observers shared his enthusiasm. Lin Tao had compiled a list of concerning behaviors. The humans' persistent testing of their environment's boundaries, their careful documentation of the habitat systems, their unexpected use of provided materials. Chief Curator, he ventured, I recommend increasing security protocols. Their problem-solving capabilities exceed our initial estimates. Vixnan dismissed the concern with a casual gesture. They're simply exploring their new home. Our containment systems were designed to stop creatures far more physically capable than humans. Their primitive innovations pose no threat. Yet even as he spoke, Dr. Patel's exercise group transitioned smoothly into what appeared to be a maintenance routine, their movements mapping out blind spots in the observation network. In the agricultural zones, humans casually tested soil samples, building a comprehensive understanding of the habitat's composition. Every permitted activity seemed to serve multiple purposes, each apparently innocent action contributing to a greater whole. The Vraxians watched it all, meticulously documenting what they saw while missing what truly mattered. They noted the humans' actions but not their intentions. They measured their activities but not their aspirations. They studied their behavior but failed to understand their potential. Their observations were perfect, precise, and entirely blind to the revolution growing before their eyes. Dr. Maya Patel stared at the sensor readings on her makeshift tablet. Constructed from repurposed entertainment devices the Vraxians had provided. 3 weeks of careful observation had finally yielded a pattern she couldn't ignore. She glanced at her research partner, Dr. Chen Wei, who was meticulously recording temperature variations near the habitat's boundary. "Chen," she whispered, maintaining the casual posture they'd all learned to adopt when sharing crucial information. "Look at these atmospheric readings during the last maintenance cycle." Chen continued his stretching routine, part of their daily exercise sessions that doubled as research time. He studied the data while appearing to check his pulse. His eyes widened slightly. "The barrier fluctuations," he murmured. "They're not random." Maya nodded, continuing her own stretches. "They're calibrated to something. Not our vital signs. Not Earth normal. Something else." Their conversation was interrupted by Sarah Cooper, a former mining engineer who smoothly joined their exercise circle. She'd been mapping the habitat's underground utility systems by carefully observing where maintenance drones emerge. "Found something interesting in the ventilation specs," Sarah said, demonstrating a new yoga pose that brought her head close to them. "The air recycling system has safety shutoffs at temperatures we consider merely uncomfortable." Maya felt her pulse quicken. "What's the exact threshold?" -15 Celsius. Sarah shifted positions again. "System goes into complete lockdown to prevent structural damage." Chen's expression remained neutral, but his voice held barely contained excitement. "That's nowhere near human survival limits. Even without special equipment, we can handle much lower." The implications hit Maya like a thunderbolt. The Vraxians hadn't built the containment systems to human specifications. They'd built them to their own biological limits. Every safety system, every barrier, every containment protocol was designed around Vraxian physiology. "Their perfect prison," she whispered, "is only perfect for them." Over the next few days, they carefully spread the word through the community's various activity groups. The exercise classes tested temperature endurance. The gardening teams analyzed soil composition and atmospheric pressure variations. The maintenance crews mapped every system junction and control point. During an evening gathering that appeared to be simple storytelling, Maya shared their findings with the group's informal leadership council. Dr. James Rodriguez, a climatologist, provided crucial context. "They see Earth as a death world," he explained quietly, as children played nearby to mask their discussion. "What we consider normal seasonal variations would be catastrophic for them. Their entire containment strategy is built on the assumption that their lethal conditions and ours are the same." "But how does this help us?" asked Lieutenant Sarah Chen, formerly of the U.S. Air Force. "We still can't walk through force fields." Maya smiled. "No, but we now know those fields are calibrated to stop beings much more fragile than us. There are gaps, fluctuations they consider too minor to matter because they'd still be lethal to Vraxians." The group absorbed this information, minds already racing with possibilities. They'd been chosen for their diversity of knowledge and skills, taken from every field that helped humanity survive on Earth. Now that very survival experience was becoming their key to freedom. "We need more data," Maya continued. "Precise measurements of when and where these fluctuations occur. We need to know exactly how much cold, heat, pressure, and other stresses we can survive that they can't." The plans began taking shape, disguised as community activities and social gatherings. Every group had its role. The exercise classes would test human endurance limits. The maintenance teams would map system vulnerabilities. The education groups would ensure everyone understood their part. As Maya watched the community mobilize with subtle purpose, she realized the Vraxians had made an even bigger mistake than they'd thought. They hadn't just underestimated human physical endurance. They'd failed to understand how humans thrived on challenges, how they instinctively found ways to cooperate and overcome. The Vraxians had built their cage to perfect specifications, but they'd never considered that their definition of perfect might be their prisoner's greatest advantage. Lieutenant Sarah Chen watched the children playing what appeared to be a simple game of hopscotch. To the Vraxian observers, it looked like harmless recreation. To her trained eye, it was a perfect mapping exercise. Each hop and jump marking the locations of barrier fluctuations they'd discovered. Remarkable adaptation, commented Dr. Rodriguez, who'd joined her on the observation bench. Their casual conversation masked the exchange of crucial data. The young ones learned so quickly. They're not the only ones, Sarah replied, stretching as if tired. Her muscles had adapted to the constant 1.1 grams gravity of their habitat, another sign their captors hadn't really understood human physiological adaptability. Throughout the habitat, similar scenes play out with careful precision. In the community gardens, botanist Dr. Aisha Patel tested soil samples while appearing to simply tend the plants. Each garden bed was strategically placed to monitor different aspects of the containment system's infrastructure. The maintenance workshop had become their primary research center, though the Vraxians saw only industrious humans keeping their living space in good repair. James Cooper, the retired engineer, had turned their primitive tool usage into an art form. It's fascinating, he explained to an apprentice while calibrating what appeared to be a simple pressure gauge. They gave us basic tools because they assumed we couldn't understand anything more advanced. But principles of physics don't change just because the tools are simple. Their observers had noted with satisfaction how the humans kept themselves busy with crafts and construction projects. They didn't realize that every wooden toy contained sensor components, every woven basket held carefully mapped data, every piece of artwork displayed information about barrier frequencies and power fluctuations. Dr. Maya Patel's exercise classes had grown larger, incorporating people from every sector of their community. Today, they moved through sequences that seemed focused on flexibility and strength. In reality, they were practicing movements that would let them slip through barrier gaps during millisecond-long fluctuations. Remember, Maya called out to the class, her instructions carrying double meaning. Timing is everything. Flow like water finding its path. Adapt to the resistance. In the education center, children learned traditional songs and stories that encoded crucial information about their environment. The Vraxians' translation algorithms interpreted them as simple cultural preservation, missing the layers of meaning humans had woven into their oral traditions. Sarah watched a group of engineers playing what appeared to be a board game. Each move represented potential escape routes, every piece placement marking the security checkpoint. They'd turned their captivity into a complex strategic exercise, hiding their preparations in plain sight. Time for the evening temperature check, Dr. Rodriguez announced, their code for testing new barrier weaknesses. They'd discovered that during habitat maintenance cycles, the environmental controls showed microscopic lapses. Throughout the compound, humans casually shifted positions. Some moved closer to barriers, others stationed themselves near monitoring equipment. Everyone knew their role in this daily data-gathering operation. The Vraxians noticed their specimens' orderly behavior with approval. The humans were organizing themselves, yes, but in ways that seemed to accept and adapt to their captivity. Their observers noted how they maintained their living spaces, developed social structures, and engaged in cultural activities. What they didn't understand was that humans had turned every aspect of their captivity into a tool for liberation. The very activities their captors saw as signs of successful containment were actually preparations for escape. Sarah checked her makeshift chronometer, another primitive craft project that actually kept precise atomic times synchronized across their community. Everything was proceeding according to schedule. They were building something unprecedented, not with advanced technology, but with human ingenuity, cooperation, and determination. "The evening gathering will begin soon," she announced, triggering another carefully choreographed shift in community activities. As people moved to their evening positions, each step, each casual gesture, each seemingly random choice of seating contributed to their growing understanding of their prison's weaknesses. The Vraxians watched it all from their observation posts, meticulously documenting what they saw as successful adaptation to captivity. They never realized they were watching a revolution disguised as resignation, a prison break masked as peaceful acceptance, a triumph of human spirit hidden beneath a veneer of submission. Junior researcher Ixelvan stared at her data displays, all four hands trembling as the implications of her discovery became clear. She had been tasked with analyzing Earth's historical climate data to better understand human adaptation patterns. What she found instead was something that challenged every assumption the Empire had made about their specimens. "This can't be correct," she muttered, running the calculations again. But the numbers didn't lie. Humans hadn't just survived on their death world. They had thrived across environmental conditions that spanned far beyond Vraxian tolerances. Her research pod was cluttered with holographic projections showing human settlement patterns across Earth. They had built cities in frozen wastelands where temperatures plunged to levels that would shatter Vraxian body chemistry. They created communities in deserts hot enough to cook Vraxian neural tissue. They even survived atmospheric pressure variations that would rupture Imperial environmental suits. Sub-researcher Ixelvan, her supervisor's voice interrupted. "Your shift ended 2 cycles ago." Senior researcher Kexler, she turned, vocal sacs pulsing with urgency. "I need you to review these findings. The containment protocols, they're all based on our physiological limitations." Kexler glided closer, interest peaked despite his irritation. "Explain." "Look at these temperature ranges." Ixelvan highlighted a dataset. "Humans routinely survive conditions that exceed our lethal thresholds by significant margins. The safety systems we designed, they're not actually containing the humans. They're protecting us from their survival range." She watched understanding dawn in her superior's inner eyes. The Empire had created containment systems designed to stop any being from surviving outside carefully controlled conditions. But those conditions were calibrated to Vraxian biology, not human capabilities. "There's more," she continued, bringing up footage from the habitat. "These primitive activities we've been documenting, they're not random. Look at these exercise patterns compared to our barrier fluctuation data." The overlay diagrams showed an unmistakable correlation. The humans weren't just moving randomly. They were systematically mapping and testing the containment system's weaknesses. "We need to alert security." Kexler reached for the communication panel, but Ixelvan wasn't finished. "Wait, you don't understand the full implications." She pulled up more data. Their social structures, their learning patterns, their tool use, everything we classified as primitive adaptation is actually incredibly sophisticated problem-solving. The displays showed how the humans had turned every aspect of their captivity into an opportunity for gathering information. Their craft projects concealed environmental sensors. Their games mapped security patterns. Even their children's activities contributed to a comprehensive understanding of the habitat systems. By the first curator, Kexler whispered, his vocal sacs nearly silent with shock. "They're not just adapting. They're preparing?" Ixelvan finished. "And our observations have been helping them. Every time we adjust the environment to test their reactions, we reveal more about our system's limitations." They stared at the habitat feeds, suddenly seeing the human activities in a new light. What had appeared to be simple exercise classes were endurance training sessions. Maintenance work doubled as surveillance. Even their recreational activities served multiple purposes. "We have to report this to the chief curator immediately," Kexler decided, but protocol required them to compile proper documentation first. As they rushed to prepare their findings, neither researcher noticed the subtle changes beginning in the habitat's environmental readings. The humans had already learned everything they needed from the Vraxians' predictable observation patterns. In her quarters that night, Ixel Van reviewed the data one final time before submitting the report. She found herself experiencing an unfamiliar emotion as she watched the humans going about their carefully choreographed activities. Respect. They had turned the Empire's greatest achievement, their supposedly perfect containment system, into a training ground for escape. Every system designed to control them had become a tool for understanding their captors' weaknesses. The Empire had wanted to display humanity's ability to survive against impossible odds. They were about to get a much more dramatic demonstration than they had intended. Dr. Maya Patel checked her makeshift chronometer one final time. All groups in position. She whispered into the repurposed communication device that James Cooper had crafted from their entertainment systems. Engineering team ready. Sarah Cooper's voice came back, barely audible. Medical standing by. Dr. Rodriguez confirmed. Children and support groups secured. Lieutenant Chen reported. Maya took a deep breath. Months of preparation had led to this moment. Every activity, every casual observation, every seeming acceptance of their captivity had been building to this carefully orchestrated plan. Initiate Phase 1, she commanded. Throughout the habitat, humans began moving with practiced precision. The gardening teams activated their modified irrigation systems, gradually increasing the humidity in strategic sections. The maintenance crews began their routine work on environmental controls, each adjustment carefully calculated. In the observation posts, the Vraxians noted the activities with their usual meticulous attention. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary, just another cycle of human adaptation to their perfect environment. The first warning came from a junior technician monitoring atmospheric controls. Slight humidity variance in Section 7, they reported. Within acceptable parameters, their supervisor dismissed. The humans are merely tending their plants. But the humidity continued rising, incrementally, strategically. In precisely calculated locations, water vapor began condensing on critical systems. The Vraxians' environmental controls responded automatically, trying to maintain their perfect balance. That's when Phase 2 began. The exercise groups, led by Lieutenant Chen, started their normal routines. But today, their movements served to circulate the increasingly humid air in specific patterns. The maintenance teams, supposedly checking system functions, carefully adjusted thermal regulators. Temperature variations began cascading through the habitat. Minor at first, then growing. The Vraxian systems struggled to compensate, exactly as the humans had predicted. Temperature fluctuation exceeding comfort parameters, a technician reported, vocal sacs pulsing with concern. Activate secondary environmental controls, their supervisor ordered. That was the moment they'd been waiting for. As the secondary systems engaged, they created precisely the power fluctuation the humans had discovered in their months of careful observation. Now, Maya's command triggered simultaneous action across the habitat. In the gardens, modified irrigation systems released carefully preserved minerals into the air. In the workshops, concealed devices activated, creating targeted electromagnetic pulses. Every human moved in rehearsed patterns, their bodies already conditioned to withstand the environmental changes they were creating. The Vraxian observation posts erupted in chaos as multiple systems began failing simultaneously. Temperature and pressure variations that seemed minor to human physiology forced them to retreat from their monitoring stations. The barriers, someone shouted. There. But the barriers weren't failing. They were operating exactly as designed, protecting against conditions that would harm Vraxians. The humans had simply created conditions they could survive, but their captors couldn't. Maya led the first team through a barrier fluctuation point they'd mapped months ago. The timing had to be perfect, a fraction of a second when the containment field shifted to compensate for environmental changes. They slipped through like water finding cracks in a dam. Control center secured. Sarah Cooper's voice came through their makeshift communications. Her engineering team had reached the habitat's primary systems. Throughout the facility, other captive species watched in amazement as the supposedly primitive humans executed their plan. Some began offering assistance, sharing their own knowledge of the facility's systems. Dr. Patel. A voice called from ahead. It was Ixelvan, the junior researcher who discovered the truth too late. She stood trembling in a reinforced environment suit. You planned this from the beginning. Maya smiled, but kept moving. You gave us everything we needed. You showed us all your limitations while trying to document ours. The researcher's inner eyes widened with understanding. The perfect environment was perfect for you. Maya finished. But humans don't need perfect. We need challenges to overcome. And you gave us the greatest challenge of all, the puzzle of our own escape. As alarms blared and systems crashed around them, the humans moved with confidence through their collapsing prison. They had turned their captor's greatest achievement into their greatest vulnerability, proving that the very adaptability that had helped them survive Earth's death world would now win them their freedom. Chief Curator Vixnan stood before the Imperial Council, all 6 eyes downcast as he delivered his report. The chamber's perfect environmental controls couldn't stop his vocal sacs from trembling. The humans didn't just escape, he explained. They fundamentally changed our understanding of adaptability. Every system we designed to contain them became a tool for their liberation. The council chambers displayed holographic recordings from the habitat's final hours. They showed humans moving with precise coordination, using environmental controls against their captors, and helping other species escape in the process. Most remarkably, Vixnan continued, they did this without destroying our facility. They simply repurposed it. Indeed, the grand exhibition now served a very different purpose. Where once there were containment cells, there were now collaboration spaces. Former observation posts had become cultural exchange centers. The very barriers designed to contain species now protected environmental zones where different life forms could interact safely. In her new office within the transformed facility, Dr. Maya Patel met with representatives from a dozen different species. The former prison had become the galaxy's first multi-species research institute. The Vraxians got one thing right, she explained to a group of crystalline beings from the Andromeda Arm. Understanding different species is crucial. They just didn't realize it should be a collaborative effort rather than an exhibition. The institute had become a center for studying environmental adaptation. Species from across the galaxy came to learn from each other, sharing their unique solutions to survival challenges. The humans' escape had sparked a revolution in how the galaxy's civilizations viewed one another. We're not here to display our differences, Maya told her audience. We're here to learn from them. In another section of the facility, Lieutenant Chen worked with former captives and even some Vraxian scientists who'd chosen to join their effort. They studied how different species adapted to various environments, learning to create spaces where all could thrive together. The perfect environment doesn't exist, Chen explained during a symposium. But understanding each other's needs lets us create spaces where we can all succeed. The Vraxian Empire had undergone its own transformation. The shock of losing their premier facility had forced them to confront their own limitations. Their technological superiority had bred complacency, leading them to underestimate the very adaptability they'd sought to study. In the facility's central garden, now a thriving example of multi-species cooperation, James Cooper worked with a team of xenobotanists. They discovered that plants from different worlds, like their sentient counterparts, could support each other in surprising ways. Life finds a way, he said, quoting an ancient Earth movie that had gained unexpected popularity among alien species. But it does better when we work together. The Empire's former containment protocols have been published across the galaxy, not as security measures, but as a guide to understanding biological diversity. What was lethal to one species was comfortable for another. What some saw as harsh conditions, others called home. Sarah Cooper, leading the Institute's engineering division, had turned the habitat's monitoring systems into a network for sharing technological innovations. Every species has unique solutions, she explained to visiting diplomats. By combining our knowledge, we all become stronger. The human escape had changed more than just political structures. It had demonstrated that true strength lay not in containing differences, but in embracing them. Species that the Empire had classified as primitive now shared their survival strategies, teaching others how to adapt rather than merely survive. Dr. Rodriguez, working with the Institute's Historical Division, documented the event that changed galactic society. The Vraxians thought they were creating the perfect prison, he wrote. Instead, they created the perfect opportunity for change. 1 year after the escape, the facility hosted the first Galactic Adaptation Conference. Representatives from thousands of worlds gathered to share their unique perspectives on survival, adaptation, and cooperation. In her opening speech, Maya reflected on how far they'd come. The Vraxians wanted to show the galaxy humanity's ability to survive against impossible odds. But we showed them something far more important, our ability to turn survival into prosperity, to transform barriers into bridges. She gazed out at the assembled beings, each adapted to their own unique challenges, each bringing their own strength to their shared future. They thought Earth was a death world that made us strong. They were half right. Earth taught us to adapt, to endure, to overcome.